Hello everyone, Soda here from H2 Plus 24, where we make learning English fun and easy for you. Now, today I'm going to explain one of the most important verbs in English, the verb to be. Verb to be is a very useful verb in English. You can find it in daily conversations as well as in written text. When we learn a new verb, we also need to learn the subject. So, what is the subject? Well, the subject is the person who completes the action. Depending on the subject, the conjugation of the verb changes. In this mini lesson, you are going to learn how to make statements and questions with the verb to be. So, if you're ready, let's get started with the meaning and form of verb to be. Now, let's quickly review the seven important subjects in English: I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. We make statements and questions with these seven subjects. And these seven subjects are used with the verb to be, am, is, are. But how do we use the simple present of the verb to be? Well, we use the simple present of verb to be to talk about something like, for example, a person's name, a person's nationality, their age, and job. Now, let me give you some example to show you what I mean. Okay, so remember, we use the simple present of verb to be to talk about someone's name, someone's nationality, their age, job, and so on. Now, let's take a look at this chart right here. This chart shows us how we form the positive and negative statements with the verb to be. On the left hand side here are the subjects: I, you, we, they, he, she, and it. Now, in the middle column here, it represents the verb to be in the positive form: am, is, and are. As you can see here, depending on the subject, the conjugation of the verb to be changes. For example, the first thing we need to do here is to go through the positive one at a time. So we say, I am, or you could say am. It's the same thing, it doesn't really matter. For you, we, and they, we have to use are. For example, you are, we are, they are. We can also make them shorter. For example, you are becomes your, we are becomes we're, they are becomes their. And for he, she, and it, we have to use is. Now, when we say he is, she is, it is, we can shorten it and we can say his, she's, or its. Okay, but how do we make it negative though? Well, to make it negative, we are going to add one word, and that word is not. It is the same thing for all the subjects. For example, I am not, or you could say I'm not. It's the same thing, it doesn't matter. For you, we, and they, we also add the word not. So you are not, we are not, they are not. So remember, you can always shorten them when you speak. And for the last three, he, she, and it, all we do is add not with is. So we could say, she is not, he is not, it is not. Or you can shorten it to say, she isn't, he isn't, it isn't. Now, the last thing that you're going to want to learn are the question forms of the verb to be. So, when we use the question form, all we do very easily is to switch the verb and the subject. So, I am becomes am I. Are you? Are we? Are they? Is he? Is she? Is it? Okay, so here are some examples of statements and questions. For example, I am Jimmy, or you could also say, I'm Jimmy. I am not Jimmy, or am not Jimmy. He is a teacher, or he's a teacher. He is not a teacher, or he isn't a teacher. So, as you can see here, when we make a positive statement, for example, I am Jimmy or am Jimmy, your verb to be am comes after the subject I. And he is a teacher or he's a teacher, the verb is comes right after the subject he. Now, let's say you want to make it a negative statement. All you have to do is add the word not after the verb to be. So you could say, I'm not Jimmy, or he's not a teacher. But what if you want to form a question? How do we do it? Well, it's not that difficult. All you need to do is to switch the verb and the subject. For example, you are Jimmy becomes are you Jimmy? You are a student becomes are you a student? He is a teacher becomes is he a teacher? She's from South Korea becomes is she from South Korea? Now, one important point I want to mention though is in writing, when you're asking a question, you need to put a question mark at the end. If you don't put a question mark, then it's wrong. When you are speaking, the way that the listener knows that you are asking a question is your voice. Your voice kind of goes up or rises at the end so that the listener knows you are asking a question. For example, is he a teacher? Is he a teacher? Okay, so now you know how to form positive and negative statements and questions with the verb to be. But how do we form the WH questions though? Now, what are WH questions? Well, WH questions are question words like what, where, when, which, why, or how. Now, let's take a look at some example here on how we can form these WH questions with the verb to be. Now, look at the left-hand column here. We have the WH questions. For example, what is your name? Now, we often contract or shorten the verb to be. So you can say, what's your name? We can say, I am Min Jun. Or you can shorten it and say, I'm Min Jun. Or you could say, my name is Min Jun. It's the same thing. It doesn't really matter. Now, for the negative answer, all you are going to have to do is add the word not. So, I am not Min Jun or I'm not Min Jun. Okay, so now let's look at the next question. Where are you from? You can say, I am from South Korea or I'm from South Korea. And for the negative answer, again, you just need to add the word not to make it negative. So you could say, I am not from South Korea or I'm not from South Korea. Now, for the next question, how old are you? You can say I am 21 years old or I'm 21 years old or whatever your age is. And for the negative answer, again, just add the word not to your sentence. So you could say I am not 21 years old or I'm not 21 years old. Now, one thing I want to mention though is when you don't need to say I am 21 years old or I'm 21 years old, you could just easily say I'm 21 or I am 21. Now, let's look at the last question. Where is your teacher from? Or where's your teacher from? You could say he's from Canada or he's from Canada. And for the negative answer, again, just add the word not to your sentence. So he's not from Canada or he isn't from Canada. So there you have it. That's how you form the WH questions and answer. Now, one very important point I want you to remember is we contract or shorten the verb to be is in the WH questions and am is are in statements. So instead of saying, what is your name? You could easily say, what's your name? Now, instead of what is, you just say what's. And in statements, we contract or shorten the verb to be am, is, are. For example, instead of saying I am Min Jun, you could easily shorten it and say I'm Min Jun. Now again, instead of saying I am, just say am. All right, so now let's move on to yes, no questions and short answers. Okay, now let's learn how to form yes, no questions and short answers. When we use the question form, all we do very easily is we switch the verb and the subject. So, I am becomes am I, you are becomes are you, we are becomes are we, They are becomes are they. He, she, it is becomes is he, is she, is it. Okay, so now let's take a look at some examples here. Now, when someone asks you, are you from South Korea? You can easily say, yes, I am. And if you're not from South Korea, you can say, no, I'm not. Are we from South Korea? You could say, yes, we are. Or, no, we aren't. Or, no, we're not. Are they from South Korea? You could also easily say, yes, they are. Or, no, they aren't. Or, no, they're not. Now, let's look at he and she. Is he from South Korea? You could say, yes, he is. Or no, he isn't. Or no, he's not. Is she from South Korea? You could also say, yes, she is. Or no, she isn't. Or no, she's not. Now, that's how you form the yes no questions and short answers. Okay, now it's quiz time. Let's practice what we have learned in this lesson. Try to challenge yourself by completing these 5 sentences with a contraction of am, is, or are. So if you're ready, let's get started. Number 1, my mother blank a teacher. Number 2, I blank 21 years old. Number 3, my birthday blank today. Number 4, my father blank tall. And finally, number 5, we blank students. Now, don't forget to share your answers and tell us where you are watching this lesson from in the comments below.